Hello learners and welcome to the lesson. Today we will continue with the subject business studies. The topic is satisfaction of human wants. In our last lesson we defined goods and services, then we explained the characteristics of goods. In our today's lesson we want to highlight the characteristics of services. There are certain characteristics that are unique to services. Services generally have some unique characteristics as differentiated from goods. In our last lesson we discussed the characteristics of goods. Today we want to explain the characteristics of services. So learners, welcome to the lesson. The subject is business studies. Business studies. We want to discuss the characteristics of services. Characteristics of services. Characteristics of services. And we also said, learners, that goods and services are needed for satisfaction of human wants. Satisfaction of human wants. Human beings strive to satisfy human wants through consumption of goods and services. So what are these characteristics that are unique to services? Number one is that services are not tangible. They are intangible. Services are intangible. Services are intangible. This means that services cannot be touched and felt, since they are immaterial. Goods we saw are tangible because they are material. You can touch goods like this pen, you can touch it. But services, you cannot touch services because they are immaterial. They are invisible. All right? For example, you cannot touch and feel teaching. You cannot touch teaching, it's a service. You cannot feel banking services. You cannot touch banking services. You cannot touch hairdressing services. You cannot touch shoe shining services. Those are services that cannot be touched. They cannot be felt because they are invisible, because they are intangible, because they are immaterial. However, the effects of services can be felt. You can feel the effect of services. For example, the effect of receiving entertainment, because entertainment is also a service. So if you are being entertained, maybe someone is singing a song and is playing the guitar. If you are seated there and I'm playing a song and a guitar, okay, in the process of entertaining you, you will feel it. You will feel happy. You can feel happy. So that is entertainment. I've said, however, the effect, it's not the service itself, but the effect. After listening to my music, okay, as I play a guitar and as I sing, then that will evoke in you the feeling of happiness, the feeling of joy. You'll feel happy. So the effect of a service can be felt. It can be done what? It can be felt. So, but generally services are intangible. They are immaterial. They are invisible. You cannot see the service of entertainment, but you can get to feel it, okay, the effect. That's the point. Another characteristic of service is that services cannot be stored. Services cannot be stored, cannot be stored. Services cannot be stored. Services can be kept, cannot be kept for future use because they are consumed as they are provided. They are consumed as they are provided, meaning that they are extremely perishable. That's why people go to entertainment joints now and then, because if you go to an entertainment joint on Saturday or on Friday, okay, entertainment, you've gone to somewhere where people are singing. It can be, say, a crusade. You've gone to a crusade where people are singing and dancing and clapping and jumping, okay, and jumping and singing. So that one, you cannot store that service. So that's why you have to wait for another day so that you can also go and have the same feeling or entertainment. So services cannot be, it's not like when you go to the shop and buy this pen. When I bought this pen, I stored it. So when I need to use it, I just pick it from the table, then I use it to write. Because it's a good that can be stored. But for services, like even teaching, that's why you go to class every day, because you cannot stop. When you are taught, then after some time you will say you want revision, because that service cannot be stored. Okay, it cannot be stored. But goods can be stored. And we said last time that goods can either be stored for a longer period of time. Those that are stored for a long period of time, we say those are durable goods, but those that are stored for a short period of time, these are the perishable goods. But for services, you cannot store services. Then number 3, the third characteristic of services is that the quality of services cannot be standardized. Quality of services cannot be standardized. Cannot be standardized. Quality or value of service cannot be standardized. It is very difficult to standardize the quality of services because services are highly variable over time, okay, from one service provider to another, okay. For example, a preacher, let me give an example of a preacher. It can be an Islamic preacher or a Christian preacher, okay. For example, a preacher may start preaching at low tone, okay, low tone. Then the preacher may pick momentum in the middle of the sermon. Then he may be full blast by the end of the sermon. He started at a low tone, then he picked up momentum in the middle of the preaching. Then towards the end, you see he's at the top, okay? Would be full blast by the end of the sermon. So you cannot say you can standardize, no standard. When someone is talking, he may change and all that. So it's not easy to standardize. Or if someone may give a service today, you've gone to a doctor, the way the doctor treats you today may not be the same way he will treat someone else. You've gone for counseling services. The counselor is offering counseling services. The counseling is a service, okay? So the counselor, the way he treats me when he's counseling me may not be the same way he will treat you when you come for counseling. I may find the counselor is in high spirits, Okay, he's in high spirit. That means he's motivated to counsel. But when you come for counseling session, you may find that he is bored, because it's not easy to maintain quality when you are offering services. And I know you've also witnessed these things I'm talking about. Sometimes the teacher may come to class, is very happy, is very nice, is teaching very well, is doing his work very well. There's a time when maybe, because the teachers are human beings, okay, maybe he may come the next day, he's not feeling well, he's a bit sick, he has a cold, okay? Or he didn't take lunch, he didn't have time to go for lunch. So he may come, he's a bit weak, because if you don't take food, you may not be very active. So it's not easy to have standardized services because of these things, examples I'm giving, because some people change. We are talking of variability. Services are highly variable. Variable means they change over time. It is very difficult to standardize the quality of services because services are highly variable. They change over time, okay, from one service provider to another. It may be the same service provider, but over time he will change. So that is a characteristic of services. Services cannot be standardized. You cannot offer them uniformly. Then another characteristic, number 4, services are inseparable from the provider. Services are inseparable. That means you cannot separate the service from the one who is providing the service. If it is a teacher, you cannot separate the service, the teaching service, from the one who is teaching, from the teacher. If it is a hairdresser, you cannot separate hairdressing service from the one providing the service. If it is a counselor, you cannot separate counseling service from the one counseling, the counselor. So services are provided directly to the consumers. They are provided directly. If you go to the doctor has to treat you directly. It's personal. Therefore, it cannot be provided separately. The teacher has to be there for teaching to take place. He cannot send his service. Unlike goods, services cannot therefore change possession. I cannot tell my brother go and provide the service that I will. No, what he will be doing something different. He cannot provide the exact service, cannot teach exactly the way I can teach. If he's a hairdresser, he cannot shift the service or possession, because goods can change ownership, goods can change possession, but services cannot change possession from one person to another. Okay? Now, the price paid is for the experience received. When you pay a price for a service, you are paying that price because of the experience that you have received. Because remember, we defined services as actions. If you are to pay for my teaching services, it's because of the experience that you receive. If you are to pay a counselor or a preacher, it's because of the experience that you've received, that counseling experience. So they are inseparable from the provider. Goods are separable. The one who provides goods, because they are physical, tangible. The trader, if you go to buy onions in the market, the one selling the onions is different from the onions. Those are distinct parties. You have onions and the one selling the onions. And you can buy the onions without the provider being present. That's why goods can be sent. There are people who are in Nairobi, they send goods to the villages. There are those who are in the village, they send their crops to Nairobi or to towns. So because goods are separable from the providers of the goods. But you cannot separate the service from the one providing the service. A very important characteristic of services. Okay, learners, am I clear enough? Are you understanding what I'm saying? We are discussing the characteristics of services. Then we can also say services cannot be seen. 5, services related to this point. Then therefore, obviously, services cannot be seen. Services cannot be seen. Services are in form of actions, and they are immaterial. They cannot be seen. Services are actions. Teaching is an action. Hairdressing is an action. Transport is an action. Banking is an action. Okay? So those are actions. They cannot be seen. They cannot be seen because they are not material. You can only see things with your eyes, things that are material, things that are physical. So these are characteristics of services. In our last lesson, learners, we discussed the characteristics of goods. Now, after discussing the characteristics of goods and services, let us now try and summarize the differences between services and goods on this side of the board. So I want you to write down the differences. These are differences between goods and services. Differences between goods and services. We are going to have these differences in a column. On one side, we'll have goods. These are goods. Then on this side, we'll have services. Goods and services. Goods and services. So point number 1. Goods are tangible. They are physical. They are material. They can be seen. Services are intangible. Why are they intangible? Because you said they are just actions. You cannot see them. You cannot touch them. Okay? Number 2, we said that goods can be stored. Goods can be stored. There are those that are stored for a longer period of time, are known as durable goods. There are those that are stored for a short period of time, they are known as perishable goods. Then services cannot be stored. Cannot be stored. The third distinguishing feature is that goods can be standardized. Goods can be standardized. We discussed it. Standardized. Services cannot be standardized. Services cannot be standardized, but goods can be standardized. Then we said goods can change possession. Number 4, goods can change possession and ownership, but services cannot change possession. Cannot change possession. Services cannot change possession because these goods are separable from the producers. They are separable. The reason why you can change possession is because they are separable from the producer. Those who are producing goods are distinct from those from the goods that they are producing. But services cannot be, the possession cannot change because you cannot separate the service and the service provider. Cannot be, the possession cannot change. It's just one and the same. Services cannot be separated from the provider. Okay? The goods can change possession. Services cannot change possession because you cannot separate the service provider and the service that is being provided. Okay? Then number 5, you can say, not all goods are perishable. Not all goods are perishable, but all services are perishable. Services are highly perishable. Services are highly perishable. I gave an example of an entertainer. When you are entertained, then that service cannot be, cannot live for a long period of time. It ends when the service ends. Okay? Then most goods can be seen. We can say most goods can be seen, with the exception of a few, like air. Air cannot be seen. Air cannot be seen. So most goods can be seen, but all services cannot be seen. Services cannot be seen. We said what you can see or feel, what you can feel is the effect of the service. Then lastly, we discussed that goods can change in value over time. Goods can change in value over time. Goods can change in value over time, and that change can either be an increase, the way land increases in value, or it can be a decrease, the way furniture decreases in value. These are goods. They can change in value over time, but services cannot change in value over time. Number 7, services cannot change in value over time. Services cannot change in value over time. And the reason why services cannot change in value over time is because services cannot be stored. The reason why goods can change in value over time is because goods can be stored. Because we are talking of a good or a service being stored for a period of time. We are talking about time. Services do not exist over time. Services perish immediately. We said services are highly perishable. So if a service is highly perishable, then there is no way that service can exist for it to change over time. But since goods are not perishable, this pen is not perishable. So over time, this pen can increase in value or reduce in value. So that's what we can summarize. This is just a summary of what we've been studying in this lesson and the previous lesson about goods and services. We've taken time to discuss goods and services, learners, because it's these goods and services that satisfy our desires. Okay? We are alive because our desires have been satisfied. Our wants have been met. All the economic activities that take place when people go to work, when they wake up, when they rest, they are revolving, all these economic activities revolve around provision of goods and services. And this provision of goods, the providing of goods is necessary for our survival here on the earth, because we are physical beings, we are also spiritual beings. As physical beings, we need goods. As spiritual beings, we need also services. Okay, we need services. For a person to grow or to live comfortably, you will need goods on daily basis. There are services that are required on daily basis for us to function effectively and efficiently as human beings. So learners, don't forget again, the topic is satisfaction of human wants, which can be categorized into two. Primary wants, which are also known as needs or basic wants, and secondary wants. They are categorized into two, and that will mark the end of our today's lesson. Have you understood the distinguishing characteristics between goods and services? If you have any question, please don't shy away from asking questions. We are always available to answer any question that is sent to us. In the meantime, learners, go through the video one more time, second time, third time, until you feel that you are understood the concept. Then make sure to write notes. Then after you have done that, you close the video and the exercise book. Then you attempt this assignment. This is your assignment. Number 1, describe two questions. Learners, 1, describe the characteristics of services. 2, distinguish goods from services. That is your assignment. Thank you for your patience and your attention. And we will continue with this topic in our next lesson. Thank you and bye-bye.